one or two office holders as well, and he kept close watch on party patronage. His appointments were calculated not only to reward, but co-opt. As his first Secretary of War, he appointed Utah isolationist George Dern. For Secretary of State, he chose conservative Tennessee Senator Cordell Hull, a sheet anchor to protect the administration from carping redneck legislators. His vice president, hard-drinking John Nance Garner of Texas, former Speaker of the House, solidified Southern support. To dole out federal money at the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, FDR chose conservative Texas banker Jesse Jones. When the Securities and Exchange Commission came into being, he appointed Joseph Kennedy to head it. It takes a thief to catch a thief, the Washington Post chortled. FDR's administrative style was a legendary mixture of straightforward delegation, flowchart responsibility, Machiavellian cunning, and crafty deception. James McGregor Burns called him a lion and a fox. Francis Perkins, FDR's long-serving Secretary of Labor, said Roosevelt was the most complicated human being I have ever known. He kept major decisions in his own hands, played his cards close to his chest, and enjoyed the consternation of opponents when his maneuvers were revealed. Occasionally, he overreached. His wrong-headed 1937 court-packing scheme boomeranged badly, as did his ill-considered intervention in Democratic senatorial primaries in 1938. He made mistakes. Some were catastrophic, such as his 1937 decision to slash federal expenditures, precipitating the Roosevelt recession of 1938-39. Roosevelt expected cabinet officers to run their own shows, but did not hesitate to enter the arena when an issue interested him. He handled the nation's diplomacy largely through Undersecretary of State Sumner Welles, a fellow Grottonian, and often ignored Secretary Hull. The Navy he ran through the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral William D. Leahy, who had skippered FDR's yacht when Roosevelt was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. When he decided to replace Douglas MacArthur as Army Chief of Staff in 1934, he sent the general on an inspection tour of Hawaii, and then announced his successor while MacArthur was en route. Roosevelt relished being president. His buoyant energy and unshakable optimism transmitted itself to everyone he met. After the lusterless Warren G. Harding, the dour Coolidge, and stuffy Herbert Hoover, FDR seemed like a breath of fresh air in the White House. His self-assurance was exactly what the country needed. With the possible exception of Ronald Reagan, who voted for FDR 4 times, no president has been more serene in the conviction that whatever happened, everything would turn out all right. "Take a method and try it," he once said. "If it fails, admit it and try another. But above all, try something." Social Security, unemployment compensation, stock market regulation, the federal guarantee of bank deposits, wages and hours legislation, labor's right to bargain collectively, agricultural price supports, rural electrification, all of which we take for granted, did not exist before FDR. As Commander-in-Chief, Roosevelt was better prepared than any president before him save Washington and Grant. For 8 years under Woodrow Wilson, he had been the number 2 man in the Navy Department. He understood how the services operated and did not hesitate to assert presidential authority. When war clouds gathered in 1939, he passed over the Army's senior leadership and named George C. Marshall Chief of Staff. As the situation grew tense in 1940, he reached out to the Republican Party and named the redoubtable Henry L. Stimson Secretary of War and Frank Knox of the Chicago Daily News, who had been Alf Landon's running mate in 1936, Secretary of the Navy. When war came, he turned to hard-bitten Admiral Ernest J. King to fight the fleet and recalled Admiral William Leahy to be his own Chief of Staff. To manage military procurement, it seemed natural to select Army engineers who had worked closely with Harry Hopkins and the WPA, Brehon Somerville, and Lucius Clay. Roosevelt nudged the nation toward a war footing. He pressed passage of the Lend-Lease Act to provide aid for embattled Britain, re-established the draft, its extension carried by only 1 vote in the House of Representatives, and, probably in violation of the Constitution, and certainly